dei motori elettrici. Da Milano ci sta uno squarcio, credo, il direttore ancora non si sa di bene. I passeggeri stanno facendo entrare sulle lance da soli. Bisogna dare.
Di salvataggio, ripeto, indossare il giubbotto di salvataggio, ragazzi alle master station.
This is it. It's over for us.
What's up guys, my name is Jake. I remember on the evening of January 13th, 2012, I saw a news report claiming that a Costa cruise ship had run aground off the coast of Italy. It wasn't until the following morning when the first pictures began emerging that I saw the full extent of a tragedy that would not only change the cruise industry forever, but would become the most infamous ship disaster next to the Titanic. Today I wanted to tell the incredible and truly unfathomable story of the sinking of the Costa Concordia. So Costa, or Costa Cruise Lines, however you want to pronounce it, is owned by the Carnival Corporation. It was founded in the mid-1800s and eventually became a pretty prominent European cruise line. It was eventually purchased by Carnival in 2000 and began building ships based on the designs already proving very successful for Carnival. Costa then began ordering ships based off the general design of Carnival's Conquest class, just another 4,000 tons larger. In 2004, Costa ordered the first ship of its brand new class, named the Costa Concordia. The vessel completed construction and entered service for Costa on June 30th, 2006 at the cost of $570 million. At the time, the ship was the largest in the Costa fleet. She was 952 feet long, had a beam of 116 feet, spanned 13 public decks, and had a top speed of 23 knots. The Concordia was the new flagship vessel of the Costa fleet, and the company ensured that the ship would be the very best they had to offer. While it wasn't anything that drastically different than the previous Carnival and Costa vessels, it did feature a massive 2-story spa along with 4 pools. The ship's center pool featured an outdoor movie screen, and the kids/family pool would end from a twisting water slide. Below the top decks, the ship would feature 5 restaurants, 13 bars, and the grand atrium that soared 10 stories. It was a culmination of everything the modern cruise industry had, and really was the new shining star for the Carnival Corporation. She truly was a modern, enormous cruise ship. The Costa Concordia had 1,502 guest cabins and 601 crew cabins, allowing the vessel to carry a maximum of 4,890 people. Following the Concordia, Costa ordered another 5 ships in its class, all being sisters to the Concordia. Captaining the vessel since its 2006 launch was Francesco Schettino, an Italian man who had been working for Costa since 2002. The Concordia began cruises catering to the Italian market, sailing mostly in the Mediterranean. She continued with regular cruises, carrying hundreds of thousands of passengers until early 2012, when one January night changed cruising forever. The Costa Concordia was starting its 7-day Mediterranean cruise starting from the point of Cagliari on January 11, 2012. After its stop in Sicily, the vessel arrived in Civitavecchia, Italy on Friday the 13th, 2012. By sunset, the Costa Concordia had set sail on its way to Savona. The official course charted took the vessel directly down the center between Italy's mainland and the island of Giglio. However, deviation was made on the official route to take the vessel much closer to the island, to perform what is known as a sail-by salute. This was a deliberate action to take the ship relatively close offshore to give passengers a unique view of the island, and also as a nod to fellow sailors on land. This isn't really a new thing for cruise ships, nor is it new for the Concordia, which had performed this maneuver several times before, even for the island of Giglio. As night falls, the vessel is making its deviation course towards the island of Giglio. On the bridge, deck officers are guiding the ship as Captain Schettino is eating dinner. The officers on the bridge are instructed to keep at least 1,500 feet away from the island shore, as that was the determined safe distance. By 9:40 p.m., the Costa Concordia is moving at 15 knots and is about to make its turn for the island. The captain returns to the bridge along with his mistress. Yeah, I'll talk about that a little later. However, there was a miscommunication between the captain to the officer at helm on what the correct turning course should be. Because of the incorrect heading numbers, the turning radius of the ship to sail alongside the island was much wider than it should have been, which brought the colossal ship 659 meters closer to the shore than it was supposed to be. The Concordia is immediately ordered by the captain to turn 20 degrees to the right. Seconds later, at 9:44 p.m., the port side of the ship collides with underwater rocks, creating a 60-meter gash in the hull, breaching several watertight compartments. The Concordia immediately lost power in its generators and full propulsion from its two engines. Panic ensued in the main dining rooms where passengers had been eating as the ship's emergency generators kicked in. By 9:51, an announcement was made to passengers ensuring the situation had been under control and that technicians were working on fixing the problem.
We're currently in a blackout as we've experienced electrical failure. At this point, the situation is under control and our technicians are working to resolve the situation. We'll give you further information. We're currently in a blackout. Our technicians are working to resolve the situation.
Il était en train de tourner comme ça vers la côte.
Thank you for your attention.
However, moments later, the bridge was informed that 3 compartments had been breached and that water has reached the main electrical panel. This was communicated to Costa Cruise Line's Crisis Center via Captain Scatino minutes later. By 10:07 p.m., the harbor contacts the Concordia. However, the ship claims that the situation is only a blackout and that they have the situation under control. During this time, the deputy chief engineer meets with the officers on the bridge to inform them that the flooding has appeared to reach compartments 4, 5, 6, and 7. At this point, the ship is starting to list as water fills the watertight compartments, and the passengers are making their way down to deck 4 where the lifeboats are located themselves.
Essere in giro con il salone. Una volta che noi abbiamo finito di sistemare il problema che abbiamo elettrico del problema elettrico del generatore, tutto sarà calma. Per quello che abbiamo questa luce d'emergenza è tutto sotto controllo.
Captain Scatino did make the decision to let the ship drift into shallow water, where at worst case the vessel would rest on the seabed. However, as pumps failed, the flooding worsened, as did the ship's listing. Even at this time, not the captain nor Costa Cruise Lines contacted anyone for help. However, as the situation below decks worsened, and as passengers climbed into lifeboats themselves, finally, at 10:35 p.m., the bridge calls for an abandoned ship, and the emergency alarm is sounded. There are currently 4,229 people aboard the Costa Concordia. By now, all passengers and crew are making their way down to deck 4 and crowding around the lifeboats as one by one are launched. At 11:00 p.m., the ship is now listing on its starboard side more than 25 degrees. By this point, any hope of the vessel being saved was gone, and as lifeboats continued to launch, the list continued to worsen. By now, the majority of the bridge officers had left their positions, including Captain Scatino, and by 11:30, the Costa Concordia's bridge had been abandoned. As water reached deck 4, the sinking of the ship accelerated as listing got to the point where lifeboats being launched from the port side was impossible. 80 people remained on the ship ascending down the side of the hull by a rope ladder, where rescue boats by the Coast Guard were waiting. Captain Scatino, however, had already returned to the shore where the Coast Guard began demanding him to return to the vessel. He never did.
Buonasera, comandante. Senta, io sono De Falco da Livorno, parlo col comandante? Sì, buonasera, comandante Di Falco. Mi dica il suo nome, per favore. Sono il comandante Schettino, comandante. Schettino? Sì. Ascolti, Schettino. Ci sono persone intrappolate a bordo, adesso lei va con la sua scialuppa. Sotto la prua della nave, lato dritto, c'è una biscaggina. Lei sale su quella biscaggina e va a bordo della nave. Va a bordo della nave e mi viene a dire, mi riporta quante persone ci sono. Le è chiaro? Io sto registrando questa comunicazione, comandante Schettino. Allora, comandante, le dico una cosa. Parli a voce alta. Allora, la nave adesso, io sono qua di fronte... Comandante, parli a voce... In questo momento, la nave è inclinata... Ho capito. C'è gente, ascolti, c'è gente che sta scendendo dalla biscaggina di prua. Lei quella biscaggina la percorre in senso inverso, sale sulla nave e mi dice quante persone e che cosa hanno a bordo, chiaro? Mi dice se ci sono bambini, donne fare l'anima dei guai. Vado a bordo, cazzo! Comandante, per cortesia. Che sta facendo, comandante? Sto qua per coordinare i soccorsi. Che sta coordinando lì? Vado a bordo, mi coordini i soccorsi da bordo. Lei si rifiuta? No, non mi sto rifiutando. Lei si sta rifiutando di andare a bordo, comandante? No, sto andando. E mi dica qual è il motivo per cui non ci va. Sto andando perché ci sta l'altra lancia che si è fermata. Lei vada a bordo, è un ordine. No, ma si rende conto che è buio e che qua non vediamo nulla. E che vuole tornare a casa, Schettino? È buio, vuole tornare a casa? Salga sulla prua della nave tramite la biscacina e mi dica ora.
The Coast Guard continued to rescue people still clinging to the side of the ship, as most residents living on the island of Giglio welcomed the stranded passengers into their homes. Because of the way the Costa Concordia drifted onto shore, the vessel rested on the shoreline rocks at around an 80-degree angle, with its starboard side completely submerged. By 6:17 a.m., rescue operations concluded, and the rising sun revealed the true extent of the disaster. Since the vessel partially capsized on its starboard side, the gaping hole on the port side showed just how severe the impact was. Daylight also revealed that 3 of the ship's port-side lifeboats were never able to be launched, which is why so many people were left aboard the ship. As a result of the capsizing, 32 people had been killed, 27 of whom had been passengers and 5 being crew members, almost all of which had been trapped below as water rushed into the ship. Truly, I can't even begin to imagine the horror it would have been like. Bodies were recovered mostly on the lower decks, indicating people were trapped inside the vessel as it capsized. In the atrium elevators, 4 bodies had been discovered trapped inside, as well as another 9 bodies trapped in 2 other elevators. Soon after the wreck, Carnival and their insurance company had deemed the vessel a total loss as damages had exceeded $500 million. Oil and fuel had been extracted as salvage crews began working on removing the wreck. However, removing a 114,000-ton half-submerged cruise ship proved to be a pretty daunting task. The plan was to place a steel structure under the Concordia and turn it upright. Massive buoyancy tanks were welded to the ship's port side, and on September 16, 2013, the Costa Concordia was turned upright, resting on the underwater platform. Turning the vessel upright showed just how unbelievably heavy the ship was as it rested on its side, completely crushing sections of the ship's steel balconies. Uprighting the vessel also allowed pictures to be taken inside, showcasing the true extent of the damage. It's so surreal to see a modern cruise ship have its interior slowly decay from being abandoned and untouched. Buoyancy tanks were fitted to the ship's other side, the starboard side, and the Concordia was slowly lifted off its platform, now freely floating. And on July 14th, the vessel was towed on its final voyage to the Italian port of Genoa, where the ship was completely gutted. Scrapping began by cutting sections of the ship apart, and by July of 2017, the Costa Concordia had been completely dismantled and sold for scrap metal. The total cost of the salvage operation was $1.2 billion. Following the disaster, the search to find who was responsible concluded with 6 arrests and prosecutions. Several of the Concordia's first officers were given jail sentences, most being under 2 years. Costa Cruise Line's crisis director, who Captain Schettino had been contacting during the event, had been given the longest sentence of the 5, with 2 years and 10 months. As for Captain Francesco Schettino himself, well, his story was, well, sketchy to say the least. He claimed that during the ordeal, he had been coordinating the rescue when he had slipped and stumbled into a lifeboat due to the listing of the ship. A video later emerged of what appeared to be Captain Schettino calmly standing at the railing on deck waiting to board a lifeboat, though he claimed that this was not him. It was also later revealed that he had been having an affair with a woman that he brought aboard the Concordia with no tickets. She, by the way, like I said earlier, was taken to the bridge of the vessel when all of this happened. However, he assured that she did not affect the disaster. He also claimed that he should not be responsible for the deaths of the 32 people aboard, as they were not killed as a result of the initial impact, and instead by the sinking. The only good thing Captain Schettino did was make the decision to deliberately ground the ship so it wouldn't fully sink. If the Concordia sank about 700 feet where it eventually did, the entire vessel would have likely went under, and it's possible that many more people would have been killed. Schettino was charged for manslaughter, causing shipwreck, and abandoning passengers. He was given a 16-year jail sentence, which he is currently serving. The Carnival Corporation certainly felt the financial impact of the disaster. In their 2012 annual report, they claimed that as a direct result of the Costa Concordia incident, the company had lost $410 million in declined revenue. Though 2012 was not a great year for Carnival at all, with the addition of the Carnival Triumph power failure in the same year. Carnival offered each of the Concordia survivors $13,000, which included the refund of their cruise. Great. Honestly, I just think the whole situation is truly unbelievable. I don't really like Carnival at all, and I think I have a fair reason to. The company and its subsidiaries have done so many shady things, and the safety features it had implemented on the Concordia, well, sucked. The fact that a modern cruise ship owned by the largest cruise line in the world could have something like this happen is unfathomable. The Costa Concordia was only 5 years old. It cost $570 million, which was all put to waste just a few years later. The disaster in its entirety ended up costing around $2 billion. Costa has now been building new ships once again, and in Carnival's defense, they did change CEOs and they have been focusing a lot more on building back their safety reputation, which to be fair, I can appreciate. It really is hard to believe though that 100 years after the Titanic sank, off the coast of a small Italian island, human error once again brought down what we thought was an unsinkable vessel, the Costa Concordia. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. My name is Jake. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat. And thank you very much for watching.